Hello, and thanks for joining today this discussion and demonstration about Sumo Logic and ServiceNow integration between our Cloud SIEM Enterprise product and ServiceNow's Security Incident Response Module. I'm Steve Forsythe. I'm a Principal Product Manager here at Sumo Logic, and I'm excited to show you this demonstration. Before we get to that, though, let's take a brief overview of the integration. As I mentioned, it's really all about customers looking to combine the power of Cloud SIEM Enterprise insight generation for threat detection with ServiceNow's Security Incident Response Module to help improve mean time to respond through closed-loop incident workflows. You'll see throughout the demonstration the integration surfacing some key information between the threat detection and the responder, including MITRE ATT&CK integration with the MITRE card that's now available in the ServiceNow Security Incident Response Module. You'll also see us extract all the observables we have found throughout the insight and present those to the responder, as well as enrich configuration items, if appropriate, with the entity from the insight. One of the important things to improve that workflow is bidirectionality. And so in this integration demonstration, you'll see those key points where we've created bidirectional information flow between the insight and the incident. This integration is available in the ServiceNow store, and you would install and configure it as many other integrations you would have for your platform. Which leads us to the demonstration, which is really targeted at that security engineer that's responsible for setting up and configuring the integration appropriately. As we noted, we're going to find this integration in the ServiceNow store, and so I'm going to download it and install it as I would other integrations. What I wanted to show you here is some of the key elements for the integration that you're going to be able to look at and configure yourself. And of course, the presumption here is that you are a ServiceNow system administrator, as I am in this environment. And one of the key things about the integration is it will be can be automatically set up to fetch those CSE insights and begin the process of transforming them into incidents. So I wanted to show you that starting script because it's the first place where you really have the ability to go ahead and start configuring things. So it's the Sumo Logic ingest, and this is a scheduled script execution, and this is that script that will fetch the CSE insights. We're going to look at how you configure that script in a minute. But what I wanted to show you here is your control over the frequency of how that and when that script runs. And so you can see by default that's set to 5 minutes, but you have the flexibility based on your workflow and how you want to fetch to configure the frequency of when the script will run. So with that, I want to go ahead and take a look at that script, so how we configure that in our plugin configuration. Well, as I mentioned, our integration between Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM Enterprise and ServiceNow Security Incident Response is like many other security integrations you may have in your environment. So what we're going to do to configure Sumo Logic's integration, hit our configuration button. You can see we need several pieces of information, and some of them have defaults available. The first thing we need to understand is what is our URL to the CSE instance to which we want to integrate. And so we have that there. And then we need to be able to have an API token. So of course this implies I have some kind of administrative role in the CSE environment as well. And I'm going to show that here in a second. I also can optionally create those new configuration items, as I mentioned in the overview slide. And what that's all about is if you're using ServiceNow's configuration management database, then as a CSE insight comes in, we will take the entity and either apply it or augment more information about it from the CMDB. This query allows you to get more than just any new insight. By default, when we go ahead and fetch insights through the API, we're only going to enable we're only going to grab new ones by default, but you can configure that query, and I'll show you more about that when we go over to the CSE instance. Additionally, you can define what various default incident states that you would like to transform to put the incident in when it creates it. And that enables your workflow to start where you have configured it to, rather than what we had to accept as the default. And that's one of the things you're going to see throughout this demonstration is we really tried to create a lot of flexibility for you to use the power of the ServiceNow platform to initiate the workflows that work in your environment. So with that, let's go ahead and pop over to CSE and take a look at how I gather some of this configuration information. So now here we are in the CSE heads-up display. And I wanted to show you how you gather a couple of pieces of those configuration information items you'll require when you're setting up the ServiceNow side of it. And in particular, key is you must be enabled to utilize an API or have an API key enabled like I am in my account here. So often that should require some level of administrative capability. If I have that, then I would simply just copy that to the clipboard and go back over to that ServiceNow configuration page and paste that API key in. Additionally, we were looking at ways that you could configure and the query that would be utilized when it's fetching those insights. And I just wanted to give you kind of a little bit of a peek under the hood here. In general, we are just using nothing more than the generic, not generic, but the CSE API for gathering insights through the Get Insights endpoint. And that endpoint, as you can read in your own documentation about the API, has a query operator, and this is all we're allowing you. You can put any form you could put through the API into that dialog box. And we would then fetch insights based on that query rather than, like I mentioned, our default, which is just any new ones that we haven't seen yet. That fetching is happening. What is going on under the hoods is we're grabbing those insights and we're putting them into this table that I'm showing you right here inside ServiceNow. So this is our Sumo Logic Insights table where we're extracting the metadata out of the insight and creating the source table that will then begin the transformation process of moving the appropriate information over to a ServiceNow security incident. So that's what I'll go ahead and show you next, is how that transform map process works and how you have the flexibility to adjust. The process of transformation is a pretty standard mechanism inside the ServiceNow platform. And as you can see, I'm inside the ServiceNow called the table transform maps. And here we can find our Sumo Logic Insight Mapper. And this is the mapper that will convert those insights we were looking at from our source table to a security incident response, to the security incident response table. In other words, it's the mapper that will take our metadata out of the insight and convert it to the appropriate fields and other facilities inside the standard security incident response table. And you can see there's all sorts of processes that one can integrate with inside the mapper. And this is where our expectation is that you as a ServiceNow administrator and someone who's used to customizing the platform for specific workflows in your organization will have the flexibility and the power to create a mapper that meets your needs. But let's go ahead and look at what we did in the default instance, and that should help give some understanding of where you might integrate better into your workflow. We're going to start to demonstrate the ServiceNow side of the integration. And here I'm at their wonderful Security Incident Explorer homepage that I use for my integration or for my security incident response module. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill into one of these 244 security incidents. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at how that transformation process took a CSE insight and turned it into one of these security incident responses. So now let's go ahead and take a look at that resulting ServiceNow security incident and what that transformation process did. As I noted, we had selected to go ahead and create and associate configuration items as they were represented in an entity in CSE. So we can see that effect happening here. We also mentioned in our configuration that there were default states available, and draft is what we will go ahead and default to, but that can be changed if your workflow is somehow different than what I'm showing at the top here, where you're able to walk through that workflow in a little bit. Now, in general, we don't try to map too much of the CSE metadata into specific fields that might have an impact on your workflow. And instead, like I've mentioned several times now, we intend that you as a ServiceNow administrator know how to leverage the flexibility of transform maps if there's a way that you can take any of this metadata that was provided and convert it into meaningful fields up in the incident. For example, if there's ways you can understand how to use this metadata to set categories, then many of the automatic workflows in the ServiceNow platform will trigger. As I mentioned in my overview, we are going to integrate CSE Insight information about MITRE ATT&CK with the security instance's MITRE ATT&CK card. So I want to show you that capability. As you can see, my CSE Insight metadata included the tag information where I've placed some of the MITRE ATT&CK tactic and technique information. And in the ServiceNow platform, it's quite easy to parse out this technique information and integrate it with the MITRE ATT&CK card that is a standard part of the security incident response platform at this point. The final thing I want to show you in the security incident is how we richly integrated all of the IOCs available inside the signals that created the insight on the CSE side into the incident so that it's right at the analyst's fingertips. And so if I hit the show IOC, we can see that I've been able to extract a good deal of the IOCs from signals, and my analyst or responder would have that available right here and could trigger further investigation into those items or even those users, as is shown here as well. I wanted to quickly show you one component of the bidirectional integration and show you that the CSE Insight associated with that security incident that we were looking at on the ServiceNow side has indeed been updated with a comment that lets the threat detection team understand what incident was created from that, and if they wanted to, they could automatically kind of jump over into that incident, assuming they have the right credentials and access rights to incidents on the ServiceNow side. So that, let's go back and look at how the ServiceNow incident is walked through its life cycle, and then we'll come back and visit this CSE Insight and see the second component of the bidirectionality. Now that we've seen the CSE Insights being fetched and transformed into security incidents and how that rich metadata is brought into the ServiceNow platform and how the ServiceNow platform then updates the CSE Insight to make sure the threat detection team is connected, let's assume the analyst or the responder has actually started to work this through the process of analysis, containment, and eradicated, and has actually reached the recover phase and is ready to go ahead and close this security incident. And so what I want to show you here is that integration that will go ahead and close the CSE Insight upon completion of this incident. So I'm going to go ahead and close on this side, and then we'll move over to the CSE Insight and see it close there. So once I'm closing on this side, I do need to go ahead and add some information. Let me go ahead and do that. We found and eradicated the issue. And with that, it's going to go ahead and let me update this ServiceNow security incident. So again, now let's get ready to go over and see what happened in the CSE Insight. And we have that up and ready. And when we refresh, we're going to go ahead and see that that closed. There you have it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the demonstration, and we look forward to your successful use of this Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM Enterprise and ServiceNow Security Incident Response integration. Thank you for your attention.